Hi, and welcome to another episode of the South Texas Power Lunch. I'm Matt Duke, managing attorney with South Texas Business Lawyers. And today I'm really excited to introduce you to Rene Dominguez, who is the CEO of VelocityTX, which was formerly known as the Texas Research Technology Foundation. Now, I sit on this board, and it is a great organization that is doing amazing things in our community on the west side regarding innovation, especially around medical, military medicine, and other educational and workforce development programs. This is a great organization, and it's been a pleasure for me to get to talk to Rene. It's been on my bucket list to get to talk to because he understands being formerly with the city of San Antonio, being involved in economic development. He is deeply rooted into this community and the efforts that the community is taking to really take our community to the next level with regard to innovation. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Rene, thanks so much for coming on the episode with us here. You've been on my bucket list to have come out here, and I've got it now, so I'm happy with that. But thanks so much for taking the time.
You got it. Looking forward to it.
So for those that are listening here, I wanted to start off by telling everybody about TRTF and Velocity. Can you give a quick history of just the rich, legacy that really is this organization that people probably don't realize?
I'll do my best to keep it short because it's quite a story, and it dates back 40 years and was the brainchild of just a tremendous group of civic leaders, elected officials. Back in 1984, General McDermott was the founder of Texas Research and Technology Foundation. He compiled a group of business leaders from McComb, Zachary, the who's who of San Antonio. Henry Cisneros was mayor. And what they wanted to do was establish a research park here in San Antonio that leveraged the bioscience and healthcare industry. Already then, 40 years ago, private research institutions were around. UT Health was established. UTSA was on the radar. The private sector was starting to come around. So there was already a need to kind of advance the bioscience industry. So they created TRTF with the idea of establishing this research park far on the west side of San Antonio, Highway 90 and 211.
Which back then was,
oh my God,
I mean,
nothing. I mean, past Lackland.
Nobody else went that direction.
Yeah.
Unless you're heading to Castroville.
Well, and we were fortunate. The Powell family donated land, 1,500 acres, to the concept. And actually, UT Health established quite a few facilities out there. The Institute for Biotechnology, the Aging Institute. They really started to invest heavily into the park. And we ourselves, in the 90s, started establishing our own research facilities and recruiting companies. So it began to really evolve as a kind of a suburban research park. But, that all changed in around 2015. In general, innovation has changed. These ideas of these isolated kind of suburban research parks are changing dramatically. The idea of, interacting, cross-sector, cross-discipline interaction in an urban setting is more of the model now. Mm-hmm. Innovation districts are pretty common. All your major cities around the globe have innovation districts. And a lot of them are in these kind of urban centers designed to kind of be a mixed-use live, work, play environment. So that's what the board did. They shifted dramatically in 2015, and we bought the old Merchants Ice complex, the oldest and largest ice factory and cold storage facility in South Texas. It was abandoned. 140,000 square feet, a whole city block.
Wow.
You know where the old spaghetti warehouse is?
Yeah.
A couple blocks in front of the Alamo Dome was this abandoned old, merchants facilities. We bought that, and labor of love. We redeveloped it. It was a historic designation. So we accessed new market tax credit, historic tax credits, and now it's a beautiful, thriving, complex of established bioscience companies like BioBridge Global and Scorpius Biologics. And then this kind of centerpiece of the development is a 20,000 square foot innovation center for startups, all in the biosciences.
It's crazy. So, I got here in 1989. I was 9 years old at that time. But I mean, if I could rewind to what 1984 looked like here, USAA, largest employer,
HEB.
healthcare, HEB, and then tourism. That's
Yep.
it.
Yep. Couple banks, Broadway,
Yeah.
Frost, some banks. Yep.
Right. And then a lot of small business that, generational businesses probably at that time. The visionary look to say, okay, this is lacking. Let's plant the seed here in 1984
Yeah.
to then have that morph into what you just described, 40 years later. That's just fascinating.
Too big. Yeah, totally agree. Two things around that. One is, and I didn't mention it on the lead in, but military medical research was already here in San Antonio
In
as
84?
well. Yep.
Okay.
And
that gives me a little bit more of why did they see the opportunity?
Yeah, I don't know if that was the driver, but fast forward to now, that is turned out to be a real strong niche for us. So much so that we're trying to establish kind of a research innovation hub for them on the Sutton property that we own.
Right.
And they've been very receptive. They too have shifted their model to have way more interaction with the private sector to advance kind of their missions. And so we're really doubling down on military medical research as part of our strategy. The second thing I want to mention was totally agree with you in terms of vision. What I give TRTF credit for was, the foresight and ability to pivot.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see kind of these well-established nonprofits taking a step back and kind of analyzing impact and saying, let's not just pivot, but let's take a completely 180 degree, approach to this, a different approach to what we're doing. And so I credit the board a lot to take that step back and say, what we're doing now is not having the impact we intended. Let's do something kind of very, very different than what we're currently doing.
Well, and it's interesting because even the initial board, right, you had, business leaders with McDermott, civic leaders, coming together to do something that is strategic and innovative.
Yeah.
Kind of that blend that you need because, government moves a little slow. Sometimes it knee jerks one way or the other. Businesses usually, especially large businesses, are more like tanker ships.
Yeah.
You're not going to pull a 180, but you're going to constantly be trying to re-chart the course, and then you may have to make a turn, but
Right.
you're going to have analyzed it before you do it. Kind of bringing those things together at the beginning, and you still do that today with the way the board is and the way that the group and the community is engaged with Velocity.
Yeah, it's very distinctive. The firepower we need from a board, spans from real estate developers, because not only did we purchase the Merchants Ice campus, but we purchased the adjacent GJ Sutton property. So we have around 12 contiguous acres right in front of the Alamo Dome, right on the near east side next to downtown. And so from a real estate standpoint, there's a lot of decisions and a lot of strategy to just develop that out. And then, we were talking earlier to land on bioscience and healthcare and innovation, perhaps the hardest industry to really, double down on startups. They require not only specialized facilities, which we have on our campus, but the technical support and funding that these startups need is tremendous. And then lastly, when you layer on that we located in one of the most underinvested and distressed communities there on the Near East Side, we've got to embed and really focus on community development at the same time.
Right.
Because we intend to have a profound impact on the area we decided to invest in.
Which is great. Talk a little bit about, stay on the innovation topic, this, innovation district and those sort of things. It's an interesting time right now. We've got a brand new mayor. We've got council shifting a little bit here in San Antonio. We've got, the Spurs and Project Marvel. There's a lot of change that's out there. And we don't necessarily have a lot of clear visions. We've got some nice pictures for Project Marvel. But the Innovation District is something that Velocity has had a keen eye on and has been consistent on. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, prior to all that activity prior to the Pearl
Right.
developing into that beautiful development and kind of moving south towards us. Even Broadway corridor and all the redevelopment kind of bleeding over and coming, under 281 towards us. And now with Project Marvel to the south of us, we identified that area, a little less than 10 years ago. So we were on the forefront of that and really saw that kind of swath of land west of Cherry, in between basically the Hay Street Bridge and the Dome, as a prime area for redevelopment. Right. And we thought that our 12-acre campus could be a catalyst for economic growth and redevelopment. So that's always been part of our plan. And now with Project Marvel, we see a real opportunity to maybe be part of the conversation and be part of the solution. In terms of kind of city leadership and kind of where we're at now, I mean, I think it's a huge opportunity for us because, we're not a real estate developer. We're not a community developer. We are a developer. We're a workforce development agency. We're an economic development agency. We're a community developer. So, we bring the need to ensure that the nearby residents share in the prosperity to the table.
Right.
And we bring the understanding of what economic development could do for the nearby residents, which means weaving in workforce development as an example. We kind of bring all those elements to the table in a comprehensive approach. And, we don't do that a lot. So some good kind of examples or analogs to our development might be the Port of San Antonio.
Right.
They've got that same kind of vision where you're bringing all the necessary elements to the table, Brooks, city base. Mm-hmm. And so it's really those place-based initiatives that I think are models for economic growth for the city. And I think we exemplify one of the opportunities.
So let's shift gears a little bit to Community House, which want to talk a little bit about that because it is truly an innovative of this for-profit, using for-profits to empower nonprofits. Santikos, which, everybody knows and loves, will probably be there tomorrow, because the summertime, it's going to the movies time. Everybody knows that model of the for-profit that's going into,
the Area Foundation.
The Area Foundation that's there. That's not the same model that Velocity has. Why don't you describe a little bit about Community House and how it's structured for Velocity?
Again, a lot of credit to the board of directors. When this shift occurred to, move to the near east side, near downtown, kind of in that urban footprint, the board started discussing the need for kind of long-term funding. Mm-hmm. And, economic development, as wonderful as it isn't one of those kind of easy strategies that philanthropy puts money towards.
Right.
They really see the private sector or EDCs or the government really pushing economic development. So, relying on traditional philanthropy to drive our strategy was already kind of being questioned. So the board instead decided to double down on economic development, meaning that they wanted to create a portfolio of legacy companies from San Antonio that are well-established, well-run companies, maybe kind of in that generational transition,
right,
going from one owner to a family member, but didn't have someone to hand it off to. The board really wanted to kind of maintain those companies in San Antonio from an economic development standpoint. So the board thought through and envisioned Community House, which is a community trust. And within that, we would buy companies or have companies donated to us, and we'd establish a portfolio of companies, run those, provide capital and strategic leadership to, continue to run them, maintain the name, maintain the employees, and excess earnings from those companies would then come to fuel the Innovation District concept and Velocity Texas. And so in 2019, we purchased our first company, Allen & Allen, 100-year-old lumber company. Everyone knows Allen & Allen. Great company. And so we purchased that company and began this journey of establishing this portfolio of for-profit companies. And then 3 years later, Quality Fence and Welding came along. Same thing. They didn't want to sell to PE. They wanted to maintain the legacy of that company
Right.
that had been built over the last 45 years. Saw Community House as a viable option, and we ended up purchasing that. And now those two companies are in the portfolio doing well. And like I said, sort of excess earnings get shuttled over to TRTF or Velocity Texas to continue the mission we just discussed.
And it's a secret still a little bit here in town about it, because for most doing a lot of M&A work, you get the people that have built a business and they're like, I'm out. Yep. I'll take my equity, my payday. I'm done. I'll work for you a little bit. PE's great, right? Generated cash flow. You're going to sell that off. You're going to work a little bit to do a transaction, and then it's going to be gobbled up into the machine. Your baby now was assimilated.
Right, exactly.
But a lot of people that have, small businesses, they don't want that, and they're stuck because it is like their baby. I mean, those workforces are like family. It's not just something that they built and it's fungible enough that they're going to, just toss it around. And there's not a whole lot of opportunities for that. I mean, you have, small business, seekers that are out there looking for certain businesses. But even so, that usually means, loss of identity, those sort of things that are out there. And then, they end up being glorified employees in many circumstances that they don't want to have. But it's a brilliant model that the community house, because it's really something that keeps these jewels of small business, which this community was built on, in our community still, as opposed to, like healthcare, where nothing, everything's a large conglomerate that owns your piece of healthcare now. Nobody is local, in healthcare largely anymore. So I just applaud what Velocity does. It's something that I still think is just an amazing,
super exciting
here in our community.
When I got recruited, I worked at the city. I was the city's economic development director. Knew about TRTF, obviously, because we worked with them, and knew about this potential new development. And in discussions, Community House would come up, and, to be honest, Matt, really wasn't bought in. All those other elements we discussed, I thought were going to be challenging enough, working in bioscience, working with startups, working with the DOD, working to transform an underinvested area. So, I went into it with sort of an raised eyebrow, like, let's see where this goes. But, I've learned to really appreciate the vision the board had and the uniqueness and the creativity around it. Our board is made up of entrepreneurs and business-minded individuals, and they understand risk. And so for them, this was a viable concept that needed structure, some governance, and some money behind, and they really felt as though we could accomplish this. And that's exactly what's happened. It's not done in a vacuum. Each of the companies have strong leaders. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, the owners stay around for an extended period of time, which we love. And you're exactly right. These are companies that they have built from the ground up, in some cases, out of the trunk of their car. Right. Each employee they know by name. They know their families. Right. They've nurtured them and laughed with them, cried with them. This is family to them. Mm-hmm. They've all put in the time and effort to be successful. So, we're looking for companies that want to continue that legacy. And that legacy and that reputation and the importance of it is something that we maintain when we put it in our portfolio. A group of advisors, a subcommittee of our board made up of board members and outside representatives helps us manage those companies. We meet on a monthly basis and discuss challenges. And hey, this isn't easy. There's challenges.
It's always easy to do
the
actual acquisition, the lawyer side.
Right.
It's the hard part after the post-acquisition that just changes everything.
The operational side of this has been intense. Yeah. It's a whole nother job. requires a lot of strategy, a lot of discussion, a lot of dedication, and a lot of expertise and money. And so it's not easy, but we feel over time that the outcome, the excess revenue from these really pumping fuel into our innovation district concept is going to be extra beneficial. But yeah, it's a special type of company that absolutely wants to maintain the legacy and the employees.
Well, again, there's a lot of them out there. And again, I think we're going to see more and more. We see a lot of kind of the lower middle market moving
Yeah.
hands, but a lot of them won't sell to private equity, you know, really because of their employees is what it becomes down to. Some of them can get over it, but they're like, you're not going to take care of the people that are like my family, like I do. And they're stuck. That's out there. Let me shift gears back to innovation and talk a little bit about the ecosystem here, because here in San Antonio, it's my opinion. I don't know if you agree or maybe you have some different thoughts, but I mean, when it comes to mature, innovative ecosystems, Silicon Valley being highly mature, Austin pretty close, a lot of it because of the importing of Silicon Valley that they've seen over the last 5 years. San Antonio, I always think, is about 20, 25 years behind a mature organization. What are your thoughts on where we sit today?
I always struggle with this because when I worked at the city as the economic development director, we would sell and hype our ecosystem as we tried to recruit companies to San Antonio. And so I'm well versed in the ecosystem across all the different industries we have, and we have made progress, and we certainly have attributes to a pretty robust ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, it's also important to look at the data and to look at it through a lens of reality.
Right.
And when you look at sort of the leading innovation indicators, we are certainly lagging behind in a lot of them. And for the bioscience and healthcare industry, as an example, when you look at innovation indexes, in some cases we don't even rank. And so, I think there's a lot of work that needs to go into, making our ecosystem even more productive and more robust. We've got the industry here, and we've got those leading industries that we can really leverage, like cybersecurity, like the biosciences, like advanced manufacturing.
Right.
But sort of those other ecosystem elements are critical if we really want to churn out that kind of knowledge-based economy and really transition. We've got a long ways to go. So from a policy standpoint, I don't want our elected officials to feel as though we've checked the box. I mean, Rackspace was great, created a little infusion. Everyone knows about it.
It still ripples around the community today.
Yeah,
it echoes all over the place. I can't tell you how many times I run into rackers.
That's right. Well, we've got to multiply that
Right.
times 10. And so, we've got to continue to work on it. Organizations like ours and our strategy needs to be invested in from the community. The port, as an example, is pursuing sort of a similar strategy around cybersecurity. There's multiple entities and multiple areas that we can enhance. I'm extremely excited about the merger of UTSA and UT Health. I think that's going to be a game changer, and I think we as a community need to continue to support that and do whatever we can. They have the ability to generate IP, to generate additional research, right, where students and faculty would get excited about and want to create startups. They're focusing on those industries that align with our economy. So, we just need to keep doing more and more. A clear example of that is investment dollars, venture angel investments. That's an area where we really need to put some thought and effort into. As an example,
right,
specialized facilities, mentoring. I mean, the list goes on advancements and additional investments we need to make in our ecosystem.
It's interesting just thinking through all of that. Again, growing up here, the industries were traditional industries, large institutions.
Yep.
HEB, USAA, father worked at USAA for 35 years, right? You didn't have a whole lot of venture-backed organizations
Right.
at all. And we still, today, like you and I have just done it, talk about Rackspace, which was phenomenal, $1 billion operation. But we haven't had another Rackspace. KCI, we had that, which, but we haven't had another KCI.
Right.
Which I guess now KCI spun out part of it,
Eventing,
3M that's there, right? But we haven't had a lot of like the recycle back out. Now we've got some great, founders that are out there that do recycle and have a venture, have an exit, but we just really haven't had the big ones. We never caught that wind of another big one after Rackspace kind of hit its peak and then, was sold and that sort of stuff. Why do you think that is?
Man, there's a lot of factors. I mean, that's a big question.
It is a big question.
That's
why I get to do my podcast.
Start over.
Let's just throw it over there.
There's a lot of reasons, and we'd have to go deep on a couple of different topics. Workforce and talent development is an area that would need to be discussed. I can't tell you how many times I've met with startups that are looking for a C-suite and looking to fill talent.
Which if I stop you there. Okay, so I get it for like workforce, non-C-suite. Now in our global world, that's accessible.
Yeah.
Right? No matter where I sit. Is it the C-suite though? That's been my challenge again, do we have the depth of founders and co-founders with the knowledge they need to take what are great ideas to the next level?
Yeah.
Where are they?
Well, I was going to start at C-suite and then end up with the student at UTSA.
Yeah.
The entire spectrum.
Yeah.
In terms of talent is a discussion. Definitely, venture and capital is a major discussion.
Right.
I mean, even kind of place-based kind of discussion needs to happen around specialized facilities and the environment and the infrastructure needed to spur that on. And the list goes on and on. So it's a complex issue, but I don't want to make it sound like we haven't made progress.
Oh no, I mean, we certainly have.
I think we've come a long way. It's just we need to keep the pedal to the metal, especially because we have these great kind of advanced industries or sectors that are 21st century. UTSA focusing on data analytics and AI. I mean, that's perfect. That speaks to kind of the direction we're going in as a society and as business. Our cyber capabilities is also kind of one of those areas that's ideal for what we're trying to build. And then some of these longer institutional industries that we have are great also, healthcare and bioscience being one of them. Having the military here is huge. And their shift towards really partnering with the private sector. So we've got all the right ingredients. It's just bringing it together and not setting it aside. I mean, what everyone looks for is the big win, the big Toyota, attracting the big company to San Antonio. But
that's a large institution that was brought in.
That's right.
Right.
Well, as much focus that we place on that needs to be placed on business expansion and then entrepreneurial development, startups. I mean, it's all three legs of that stool that need to be really focused on.
Your thoughts, if you want to dodge it, that's fine with me too. But if I look back, Henry Cisneros, visionary, very planned, strategic, long-term thinker, still does it today. You had Castro come in, same thing, brought that in. We haven't had anybody put a long-term strategic plan to really bring everybody together. Is that one of the things? I mean, a lot of the progress that has been taken, I would say, came from at least getting boats to at least start to look in the same direction. Because we've got a lot of infrastructure. We've got a lot of great programs. We've got a lot of great organizations that are out there. But not everybody's rowing in the same direction. You know what I'm saying? I mean, here at Geekdom, love Geekdom, right? They're rowing in a certain direction. Velocity, very similar direction, but different direction. But is there the coordination down at the port? Be honest, I'm not. I know they're rowing. And they got a lot of, but is there the coordination of everybody from a community standpoint? Do you think that exists? Is that the thing that's missing maybe right now to take us to the next level?
I've thought about that question a lot. I won't dodge it, but from sort of the elected official side of it all,
Right.
And our city and county leadership, I think they're very supportive. San Antonio has a lot of critical issues that need to be dealt with, like poverty and sort of the homelessness issue that we have.
Right.
And they invest in those issues because of how important they are. Can we apply the same kind of focus on economic development? I think so. And I think, leadership throughout, from Henry Cisneros to now have taken certain aspects of it and worked on it. Is there a comprehensive kind of strategy to kind of bring it all together? Well, I could argue that sort of the big pivot that Greater SATX made in 2009 and 2010 and their evolution to go regional are kind of little steps along the way that have been really getting us to that point. And so I think progress has been made. And I guess like any normal human being, I just wish it came faster. And I wish
we all want it. Yeah. We all want it today.
And and I wish there was more resources applied to it.
Sure.
What I can do now is just focus on the tremendous opportunity I have in running Velocity Texas, serving in conjunction with the board, and focusing on startups in the biosciences, urban redevelopment, and creating opportunity for the nearby residents. So, I'm focused on doing what I can, given my world of influence.
Well, and I would say, and kind of end on the fact, if we just look 10 years, right? They made the decision to go out to the merchant ice 10 years ago, which is a long time ago.
Yeah.
But you blink back and see the beautiful facility and all the progress that's there.
Yeah.
But to your point earlier, it wasn't just snap the fingers, let's go out there and be out there. It took a decade. Well, Rene, I appreciate you and all that you do for the community and your insights. I mean, you have the diversity you have from being inside City Hall to being on the outside. Your passion for economic development and for the community is fantastic.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming and talking
Thanks.
today.
Appreciate it. Anytime.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did. Here at the South Texas Business Lawyers, our mission is to support, educate, and advise every small and medium-sized business in the state of Texas. And this podcast is just another way that we like to help inform you about the great things going on in our community. We hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you next time.